So let's go with that. I'm going to continue. This is about spiritualism. And this it continues to draw from Longley's teachings and illustrations as they emanate from the spirit world. And just to give you a little bit of background here, Longley was a medium at the time, and this is the teachings that she received from those souls that she was communicating with and sharing with the group. So this is what a seance was about when spiritualism was developing. It was primarily for learning of those, I want to say, higher teachings. But many of the teachings that they bring through are the same teachings that you will read about in the pagan religions, in the Christian religion, in Islam. It's all about nurturing others, forming the community, and communing with the divine. And they all teach that we are emanations of the divine. And she tells us that humanity, well, I shouldn't say she tells us, this is what I drew from it, that humanity is a collective of the divine, meaning that together we are the divine, a community. It's very similar to the soul realm being built through cooperation. Because what the souls teach is that the only difference between the soul realm and this realm is our perception. So all those people dying to go to heaven can bring heaven to them. And that's what these teachings are about. So the divine is composed of corporeal and incorporeal beings. Meaning the divine is composed of the souls that we call spirits, and those souls that are entombed in the body, or the physical aspect. And what can be done in the soul realm can be accomplished here, because it's a matter of perception. It's very much like this whole theory behind the law of attraction. What your mind is focused on is what you get, period. That's what Reverend Thomas said about manifesting, something I was editing just a short time ago. And he says that the universe is continuously reacting to our thoughts. And I know this through my own experience. So that cliche, careful what you think, or wish for, that's it, careful what you wish for, is true. Very true. So structures in the soul realm are concentrations of magnetic force or intention. And our buildings should also be of concentrations of intention. And what would our buildings be? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what we build for ourselves. The pain you were talking about just a moment ago, that can be considered a building because it's constructed. The typical message of pain is that, hey, you made a mistake. Don't do that again. What does pain like to do to us? They like to rub our noses in things. Just like that message. Likes to rub our noses in things. You know, when I was in the hospital with the gallbladder, that extreme pain, it was telling me, get your butt to the hospital because something's not right. And if I chose to ignore that, well, it's my fault. So that building is intention. It's the body. The body has its own frequency that melds with our mind, our emotions and everything. It has its own frequency. It has its own language. It's like our emotions. When we experience our emotions, they're giving us messages. And if we don't interpret the message properly, all hell breaks loose. Fear is a good one. Typically, when we're afraid of something, it's because, well, we don't know enough about it. Every time I get up here and speak, I still get the jitters because I don't always know what I'm going to say. And the best way to treat fear is to just accept it. We did our little baggage cleaning exercise a few weeks ago. And the idea behind that was to gain an understanding. So you become fearful, figure out what it is that you're fearful of, and feed it. I think we talked about feeding the demons, a little Buddhist teaching. Nurture your fear. And by nurturing your fear, you begin to understand it. Makes sense. Of course, didn't make sense to me at the time when I read it the first time through, but after experimenting, yeah, okay, yeah, this works. This works. And she writes that those who are naturally harmonious with soul teachers aid in the instruction of less harmonious souls. Now, she's talking about these soul teachers, these incorporeal beings. And they're not necessarily those who have lived here and then transitioned into the soul realm, because if there is a multi-universe, an open-ended universe, as her talk teaches us, then we're not the only ones in the universe. There are beings in these different dimensions, these different frequencies. Anybody watch Doctor Who? They've got a great adversary in there called the Weeping Angels. And these Weeping Angels exist in a quantum dimension, meaning they exist outside of time, because quantum mechanics has very little to do with time. But they created creatures there, which is cool. But if you've meditated and you've had some interesting conversations with some interesting beings, or some interesting experiences with some interesting beings. For instance, one time I was meditating, and I've got my eyes closed, I'm in my chair, I don't know if I was listening to music or anything, but I'm watching this light in the horizon. And all of a sudden this light makes a 90-degree turn, just like that. That quick. I practically jumped out of my chair backwards. It was that real. Does that mean it was somebody who'd lived here and then transitioned and was playing games with me? Could be. Could also have been a being that existed in that particular level or realm. I don't know what to call it. But, we're not the only ones in this universe. There are other beings there. Science suggests this idea of a multiverse, where every time there's a decision, a branch of reality moves off on its own timeline, which can be interesting. It's another experience I'll share with you at a different time. But the idea here is that these souls, these light beings, as Hertot likes to call them, are harmonized with themselves and with their environment. And those who are less advanced, who are less harmonized, they impress upon them thoughts and ideas. Ever do something that you really can't explain, you just did it? You know, like me pulling this stuff out, I just did it. That's these souls, these light beings, bringing teachings to you. Trying to bring you into a more harmonious existence. Because what is heaven? Where is heaven? The kingdom of God, Jesus taught, is within. The only way we can get to something that's within is to be receptive to it, is to calm ourselves. And when we calm ourselves, we can stroll through the kingdom. When we calm ourselves, these souls bring the information to us. We open ourselves up. I just gave you messages. Some of those could have been spot on, freaky spot on. But do I know that? No, I don't. I don't know that. But I open myself up. I put myself into a receptive state to where I can see that. Now, if I want to go deeper into the information, I have to put myself in a deeper receptive state. Any comments or questions?
How do you do that?
Good question. Do you meditate?
Yes.
Okay. So,
Remember my message.
what was your message again?
I'm holding her too tight.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's right. You had the balloon message. Yeah. Well, what's your modality?
My modality of when I meditate?
Yes. Because meditation is just a method.
There's many.
But what resonates with you right now?
Usually, I just try to sit in silence, but my brain doesn't stop, so that's
It's
why
not-
I asked you.
It's not supposed to stop.
Well, what I mean is, it's a monkey mind. It just doesn't, it's like all these things go through my head. It's not, it's my ego. It's not, that's what it is.
It's not your ego.
Okay.
It's not your ego. The mind, the purpose of the mind is to think, to develop ideas, to think. So if you are of the opinion, and there are many who write this, that you just stop thinking, well, you can't do that. I watched a TED Talk video one time, and the guy says, all right, take 5 minutes and don't think of anything.
Oh, gee.
Or no, 5 seconds. 5 seconds and don't think of anything. So he did that 5 seconds, and when he spoke again, he said, how many of you succeeded? Raise your hand. No hands went up. So he explains. He said, yes, so I am thinking to myself, okay, no thinking for 5 minutes. And he starts developing this plan for no thinking. It's an impossible thing to do. The idea with meditation, with all these thoughts flowing through your head, is you become the observer. And what does the observer do? What are you doing when you are observing something?
You're not reacting to it.
Okay, you're not reacting. Anyone else?
I would think that if you're observing something, you're critiquing it. I mean, you're probably,
Okay,
you know what I mean?
so you're critiquing.
Mm-hmm.
Bandura, I forget his first name, but he developed this theory called vicarious learning. And that's how we learn for the most part, is vicariously. So the observer is learning. The observer is absorbing. When you are watching TV attentively, mind you, not just attentively, you're absorbing information. How many of you saw something interesting in a documentary? Yeah, that's vicarious learning. So when you set about meditating, the idea is to observe your thoughts as they move through without reaching out to them. When the grocery list comes by, don't start planning, don't start filling the list out. You just watch it go by, and then the next one. And eventually that train that starts to slow down. And as it slows down, you begin to open up to information. And I've really got to see if I can find the article. But science recognizes that there is a surplus of information out here. There's a surplus of information that they can't explain. And when we quiet the mind, and when we quiet the body, and when we quiet the emotions, there's the big one, quiet the emotions. Try and quiet the emotions. Has everybody watched the early episodes of Star Trek? Okay. You haven't? Well, Spock is a Vulcan. And Vulcans are said to suppress their emotions. Well, they don't really suppress their emotions. They merely quiet them.
To absorb them? I remember Spock now.
Well, you could say that he absorbs it, but he mostly quiets it. Behavior is the expression of emotion. How a person behaves tells you what mood they're in. That's why you can tell when somebody is feeling crappy or somebody has something on their mind and they're trying to avoid talking about it. So, you learn to quiet your emotions. And the more you do this, the better you become at it. Believe me, when I started doing messages, it was a struggle. It was a struggle because I was reaching for the message. I wasn't taught any different. And then I went to this event and I'm standing on top of this telephone pole and I close my eyes and I meditate and then it hits me. Well, sort of. Allow the message to come to you. And the only way that's going to happen is if you quiet the mind and quiet the emotions and quiet the body. They become harmonized. That's what this is about. Harmony. Nature is all about harmony. What do these storms do when they rip through these communities? You drive through them and you see all kinds of tree limbs down and everything. And, oh man, this is horrible. But what nature did was trim the trees. Unfortunately, she didn't go to Home Depot and get a Black & Decker trimmer. Because the old ways are always the best ways, right? So, does that answer your question on how you do that? Yeah. It takes practice.
Yeah.
And with practice, it becomes second nature. And then as it becomes second nature, well, then it just becomes part of you. To the point to where you can stand or sit, take a deep breath. Everybody take a deep breath. And slowly let it out. One more time. And slowly let it out. And one last time. And slowly let it out. And how do you feel?
Relaxed.
There you go. Let's see, where are we at? Okay. So the principles and influence of spiritualism is effected through mediumship. Now, mediumship is typically defined as communicating with the so-called dead. But it's so much more than that. Remember these light beings I mentioned earlier? That's what mediumship is actually about. Helena Blavatsky, in her, I think it was The Secret Doctrine, wrote that if spiritualists could get off the idea of talking to only those so-called dead souls, they could open themselves up to so much more. And her talk talks about these light beings, these lords of light, such as Jesus and Buddha. We read their teachings, and I don't know about you, but when I'm reading, I hear a voice narrating. Who's to say that voice I'm hearing narrating is not the actual person who wrote it? Especially when they say, that's not right. So, meditation is a pathway to mediumship. I think it was Sojio Rinpoche who said that meditation is a pathway to many things. Because what meditation does is it teaches you how to quiet yourself. And then the experiences are something else. Transcendentalism. You know, when you're meditating and all of a sudden you feel as though you're no longer in this reality, but you're in a different reality. And you get you're bombarded with this huge teaching there. It's not like sitting in a classroom. It's just, boom, it's there. And you can't explain it. You feel as though you are part of something much larger than yourself. It's like a near-death experience without having to die. But it's also called a religious experience. And that's what mediumship is. It's a religious experience. Because not only are you communicating or communing with those souls that have moved on from here to the next realm, but you are communing with the divine. Because everything these souls teach, when you read these books about spiritualism, such as Longley's or Edmund's, is they talk about this divine light. They don't talk about God. They talk about this divine light and how this divine light emanates harmony. You want to get in touch with God or the divine? Quiet yourself. When you feel as though you are outside your body or in a different realm, you're communing with the divine. You're communing with God. And this information that comes through, it's impressed upon you. You don't just, okay, that makes sense. No, that's not the way it works. It's just there. And it's, wow! You got to share it. Anybody experience this? Oh, come on. Those aha moments. Has anybody had an aha moment? All right then. It's the same thing. Those aha moments are the same thing. It's on a much smaller scale. The transcendental experience, well, that's on a grand scale, and it's like, wow! The book of Revelations. We're all familiar with it somewhat, yes?
No,
Yeah.
that's one thing. My father's a minister. That's one thing my dad refused in his church. never touched it. So I have no clue except what I looked for maybe Catholics.
Smart man. Because typically people look at the book of Revelations as gloom and doom when it's not. It's telling you how to awaken, not to be confused with woke, but to expand your awareness. How does Revelations begin? I had a dream. And that's how you should interpret it. Because when you interpret it as a dream, this doom and gloom is disappears. When it talks about the whore of Babylon, it also talks about the queen of light, or something like that. I got the wording wrong, probably. But, they're both aspects of the same thing. It's got this one part in there that reads, because you are lukewarm, I spit you out. You know what lukewarm means? Why you spit out? Lukewarm has no taste. You're neither doing something you shouldn't be doing or doing something you should be doing. You're doing nothing. I think the proper term is autopilot. Some people like to use sheep. But I get this horrible image with sheep. Does that make sense? Comments? Questions? Don't let me just stand up here and spout because, I may have this all wrong.
Well, I think you're right on.
Which part?
Well, I like you, I read books, Of course, I like The Course in Miracles, but number 2 is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Are you familiar with that one?
No, I haven't read any of his material.
Oh, you should have. But it's what you were talking about. I forgot what it was, but it's in there somewhere.
Isn't Eckhart Tolle just about being in the present?
Right.
Eckhart Tolle,
Yeah.
basically, I read his book, basically about being in the present,
Yes.
being in the now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've got 3 of his books. I like all of them. They're right up there. I think he's right on. But it's what he's talking about also. I should have brought the book along,
Well, next time I'll try and send you some crib notes. if they'll give them to me.
Do you go to the Unity Church?
I don't.
Okay.
So there's a difference between being in the present and being present.
Correct.
One is participation.
Which is what you're trying to engage with us now.
One is participation, and the other one is observation. Both are teaching. Both are good ways of learning. But in the soul realm, and the soul realm is all around, the important thing about the soul realm is experience. So you want to participate as much as possible. You want to make mistakes as much as possible.
Yes. Can I share with you?
Sure.
I just heard a story about a man. He had a near-death experience, and he was being interviewed by somebody on YouTube. But anyway, he said that when he was a young boy, his grandfather used to say to him, "What mistakes did you make today?" And he said, "Oh, I didn't make any." And my grandfather would not reward me. But when I told him of the mistakes I made, he rewarded me because he knew I would have learned from those lessons. So I thought that was interesting. I just heard that last week.
Cool, it's a good story. Because when you say, "Oh, I didn't do anything wrong," the first person you are deceiving is yourself. I do things wrong all the time. I just overbid to it. Hey, So I want to close with this. Well, no, before I close with this, do you have any thoughts you'd like to share, Ray?
No, not really. When I meditate, I practice breathing, and those things that you talked about, those things that come in, but in my practice, those are illusions. And you don't fight it. You just acknowledge it and let go of it. Because if you address it, then it distracts you from your focus. But when you get, when I'm practicing, I will get to the point where, I won't say mindless, but I'm aware of my presence and nothing else. So, that doesn't happen often.
No.
It takes a bit to get there.
Even in the studies, there's an article about transcendental meditation, or maybe it's a book. Anyway, it's the same thing. Pure consciousness is what you're referring to. It's what it's called in this particular writing that I looked at a while back. And everything you said is correct. Same thing I said, different words. And you'll find that with most teachings, it's the same thing, different words. The reason we move from one teaching to another is because we don't necessarily understand one teaching, whereas we'll understand another teaching better.
Bye.